All right, so Minnesota Vikings come into this season after them as well having a really, really good regular season. And then you have the nightmare that was the last week of the season and the nightmare that was the first game of the playoffs. Sam Darnold proved really all year that, okay, this is a guy who can actually play quarterback. This is not a guy that's seeing ghosts. This is not the quarterback that we remember from the Jets or the Panthers. He made big time throws to his credit throughout the season. I mean, his throw against Seattle in Seattle was one of the best throws I've ever seen from a quarterback. And that's Sam Darnold we're talking about again here. So, big showing for him. Then he gets to the last week of the season and the postseason and their first and only game in the postseason, and he was not good. He was really not good. As Nick Wright would say, he went into pumpkin mode, and Sam Darnold walks out the door because JJ McCarthy is coming back off a torn meniscus and is expected to start this season. In fact, Kevin O'Connell has already confirmed that he will start this season. JJ was the 10th pick in last year's draft. He was the only quarterback from last year's first round to not start a game last season. Again, like I said, torn meniscus, suffered during practice during the 2024 season. That it's going to be an interesting question for them. He was good in the preseason. He showed some preseason flashes. Is that something we expect with him going forward? He's been a guy that's really always been a winner, no matter where he's been. And he's joining a franchise and Kevin O'Connell that has also been a winner recently. Kevin O'Connell has done a great job in terms of making these quarterbacks that aren't necessarily in the top 10 and turning them into winners, and not necessarily producing more stats with them, but turning them into winners. And you see that. Kirk Cousins, 2021, this is the year before Kevin O'Connell joins them. 8-8. Has a great season from a production standpoint, but he's 8-8. The next season, first season with Kevin O'Connell as the head coach after the Rams won the Super Bowl. Kevin O'Connell was the Rams offensive coordinator for that Super Bowl team. Joins the Vikings. Kirk Cousins is a winner, 13-4. He was 4-4 the next year before he popped his Achilles. They had a tough start. They started 0-3 to start that season, nearly starting 0-4 with the loss to the Panthers and an 0-3 versus 0-3 game that I remember watching very closely on NFL Sunday Ticket. But my point is, he turns them into winners. Sam Darnold, in 2 years starting in Carolina, was 8-9. Comes to the Vikings, starts last season, was 14-3, and his numbers actually went up a lot. So this is, Kevin O'Connell has proven that he can take quarterbacks that aren't necessarily in the top 10 and turn them into winners. And in some cases, he can even turn them into guys who can put up really good numbers that aren't as good as you would expect them to be. And that'll be an interesting question for Seattle. But for the Vikings, is that something Kevin O'Connell is going to do with JJ McCarthy? And then my other question for them this season is going to be, is JJ McCarthy finally an elite quarterback for O'Connell? And that would be my question to y'all is, do you guys see JJ being not necessarily, do you see him being elite? Do you see him just being a capable starter? Or is he just another game manager for the Vikings?
It's really hard to put together kind of how I feel about him, because the style that Michigan played when JJ was the starter there was just, had such a dominant run game that he wasn't really asked to do much. And at times when he was asked to do a lot, he didn't look great. But at the same time, you could tell that he was athletic enough that he could make plays. I mean, it's just a freak play, but the one that comes to mind is they try and run that double pass, and the running back throws the pass to him, and it's behind him, and he has to leap to catch it and turn, set his hips, and fire all in one motion as has a linebacker, someone bearing down on him, and he's getting smoked, and he delivers a dime.
In the Rose Bowl, by the way.
In the Rose
Not
Bowl,
in
correct.
The Rose Bowl.
So it's clear to me that he has the talent. I think he has the athleticism and the traits to make plays and be more than a game manager, but we've just not seen it yet. And so I just really don't know what to expect from him.
Yeah, so JJ McCarthy in his last season at Michigan threw for under 3,000 yards on 9 yards per attempt with 22 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. His biggest, you asked if he was a game manager. His biggest, the best thing he brings to the table is he threw 9 interceptions in 2 years as a starter. That's really good. He threw only 4 his senior season. The issue is he's just not going to be aggressive. Like I said, 9 yards per attempt. That's pretty low for a good quarterback. That's not in the top 10. As a quarterback in college that year, he was not top 10. You had guys like Jaden Daniels throwing for 11.5 with 40 touchdowns. You had guys like Caden Salter at Liberty going 9.9 for 32. That's a smaller school.
Liberty stats are fake. So.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel at Oklahoma, 9.5 with 30 touchdowns. Bo Nix at Oregon, 4,400 yards, 9.5 yards per attempt, 45 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. So even as efficient as he was, statistically, he just was not that good. And in part, that was that Michigan offense. It was a very run-heavy offense. But I think that it's a little... it would not be wise to say, well, this guy was efficient in a run-heavy offense, so if we double his workload, that efficiency is going to continue. That's not necessarily the case. Quarterbacks can benefit a lot participating in a run-heavy offense because the defense is every single snap stopping the run first and pass second, and so quarterbacks benefit from that. And so if you say, well, he was efficient in a run-heavy offense, if we put him in a pass-heavy offense, he's going to be just as efficient. That's not how that works because now the defense is stopping you. You're their number one priority. And so I would be a little bit nervous with JJ McCarthy as the quarterback when all the defense, not all, but the defense's main priority is stopping him. Yeah. He was effective in his, effective in his preseason game. Had 188 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, only 19 dropbacks. But I also think people are just like, I kind of forget how good Sam Darnold was last year. He was top 10 in yards per attempt, touchdowns, but he did in that last 2 games of the season, Week 18 and then the wild card. He imploded, posting PFF grades of 45 and 55. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he does in Seattle. I'll be interested to see, are there Viking fans who regret if he has another really good season in Seattle? Do Vikings fans regret letting him walk? And can JJ McCarthy step in and kind of meet the expectations that have been set under Kevin O'Connell? Mm-hmm. So yeah, we'll see. I'm not the highest on him. I'd be a little bit nervous, but I could be wrong. He fits the stuff. A white quarterback from Michigan. We've seen those enter the NFL before and be good.
Sure.
So
yeah, the kind of vote of confidence I could give JJ, and it's because it seems Kevin O'Connell has kind of given him the vote of confidence, right? JP hyped him up as this guy that knows QBs and knows how to
get the best out of him.
Get the best out of QBs, and this is the guy that he took in the draft. At 10, yeah. Just making sure that it wasn't another guy there. But he took him at 10. I know Sam Darnold had the bad end to the season, but he had a great season holistically, and they decided to move on to him so they can get to this JJ McCarthy kid that they really like. And so it's a thing of like, if we're gonna trust that O'Connell is this guy that knows QBs, then I'm going to trust that he knows what he's doing with JJ McCarthy.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be smooth sailing rookie year, but I think I trust him.
I think to give hope to the Vikings fans and to push back on Sanders' argument, which I completely understand. I think there's plenty of reason to be nervous, and I think Vikings fans are nervous. But I think a part of this is Kevin O'Connell, gets the most out of these quarterbacks, but you still got Justin Jefferson, and you still have Jordan Addison.
Yeah.
And for the pushback on JJ not throwing it down the field a ton, he's going to throw it down the field with Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, 100%. And so I think we're going to see more of that. I think we're going to see the explosive play a ton out of Minnesota because that's what they're best at. Like Justin Jefferson is not necessarily a guy he's not 5 yards in a cloud of dust. He's 25 and then 35, and then he pops you off for 65. And I don't expect that to change because that hasn't changed with any quarterback that's ever played with Justin Jefferson. He's made any quarterback that he's played with look really good because he's out there on the field, and I expect him to do no different with JJ. But I completely understand the concern because JJ is not necessarily a guy who's had a ton of reps throwing the football. And then division-wise, like the schedule is not going to be easy. They're going to have some big questions there. I think the opening of the schedule, though, helps them a ton, and we all agree on this. They're opening 5 weeks before the bye, Week 6. They go to Chicago to open the season. That's going to be a tough one. Ben Johnson's first game at Soldier Field. But then they host Atlanta. They host Cincinnati. They go to Aaron Rodgers, and they go to Cleveland. Now, a big thing about those ones, they host Atlanta on Sunday Night Football, and they're not going to Pittsburgh and going to Cleveland. They're actually playing that game in Dublin, Ireland, and then the following week they're playing it in London, England. So those are not road games. Those are actually games where it's essentially a neutral site game. So I think that helps the Vikings a ton because Pittsburgh is a place that has a really good crowd, and Cleveland can even have a good crowd as well. And that's going to be an interesting matchup in London. Shedeur Sanders potentially versus JJ McCarthy. I think that's going to be a really fun game to watch. So we all have them going 4-1 to open the season, and then after that is where it gets really interesting, kind of rough.
Yeah.
Hosting Philly, going to the Chargers, going to Detroit. They host Baltimore. They've got the Sam Darnold revenge game. I think that's going to be a really fun one. Going to Seattle. Yeah. They're going to play on Christmas, hosting Detroit. That'll be interesting. They go to Dallas for a Sunday Night Football game. So they have 4 primetime games, 6 nationally televised games with Dublin and London games. So you're going to see a lot of JJ McCarthy. So his rookie season is about to be on full blast. And I think I wonder if that's going to put a bunch of pressure on him while he has been a guy who has stepped up. I mean, he was the quarterback at Michigan and won a national championship. So I don't expect him to waver in that. But they are going to be in front of your eyes a ton next season. A big thing I think is going to help this team, though, is the defense. They were the second best rushing defense in the league last season, and we haven't really even touched on this yet. Their additions, they were 4th in sacks as well. They returned their entire defensive line, and then they add Javon Hargrave from the 49ers, a really good defensive tackle, and they add from the Commanders Jonathan Allen. And I think that's going to help their pass rush and their rushing defense up front very, very well. It could help them a ton in the Detroit games with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I think the defense with Brian Flores is going to be really, really good again, and I think that's going to help the Vikings a ton because they got after the quarterback last year. It helped Sam Darnold a ton. They weren't really necessarily the best offense with Sam Darnold, and I don't expect them to be the best offense with JJ McCarthy as the rookie quarterback. So defense is going to help them a ton, and I think it's going to be a key for them next season because they're going to play some really, really good quarterbacks in Lamar Jackson and Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. They get to play as well. They get to play Joe Burrow on this list. Shedeur Sanders, they'll play elite quarterback, I would think. So it's going to be interesting. We all kind of agree. I have them going 8-9. Sanders has them going 9-8. And Jack has them going 8-9 as well. Now our Vikings fan, which is actually who is our Vikings fan?
It's a Sports Illustrated writer, Joe Nelson. I was going to talk about that.
Sure, go ahead.
Talking about how nervous Vikings fans are.
He's not nervous.
This writer would disagree. Sports Illustrated writer Joe Nelson has the Vikings going 14-3, starting the season 6-0, and then winning 8 of their last 9, losing only to Washington on that back half of the season. So there's some confidence, I guess, amongst Vikings fans. They do believe in JJ McCarthy. I did not get a chance to read his article because we were prepping this afternoon before the show started at 5. But there's clearly some excitement there, but not on this podcast for sure. The real question Viking fans need to be asking is, could we see was it a Chet Holmgren year 2 Rookie of the Year? Like, is that a thing in the NFL? Because I feel like I've never heard of that happening. I don't know what the precedent there is historically.
I don't know, but that I'm curious there. My guess would be no, but we don't have a lot of precedent there.
Yeah.
To see players missing their entire rookie season and then being good enough to win the Rookie of the Year the next season.
Yeah.
So
that's something to keep your eye out for.
Sure.
I mean, you don't have a lot of rookies that just missed that entire opening season.
Yeah.
That's
kind
of unprecedented in itself. I mean, any sport.
Realistically, if that was an expectation, I think there's a good possibility JJ McCarthy is the favorite to win it. Over a guy, I mean, I would if JJ McCarthy had been drafted this year. Let's simplify it by saying that I would have him as my favorite to win Rookie of the Year over a guy like Cam Ward or Jackson.
I mean, he's got the best situation.
He's got the best situation.
He may have gone number 1 as well this year. I think there would have been an argument.
There would definitely be an argument. I would still have taken Ward. But, I mean, JJ McCarthy won so big by being able to come out when he did and get into the NFL when he did. And even though he got screwed by an injury, now he's in a way better situation than most of the guys that got drafted last year with him, and now all the guys that got drafted this year, like Jackson Dart and Cam Ward. So, and Tyler Shuck, he's in a better situation than that.
I do want to say my biggest thing for the Vikings next season, and it's a huge loss for them, a huge offseason loss. They lost Cam Bynum, who, if you don't recall, was one of the key, if not the key piece to their awesome defensive celebrations last year, if you remember them. They had a lot of choreographed celebrations that they had throughout the year. Cam Bynum was one of the leaders of that, and he goes to the Colts. So
Huge for the Colts.
some lost mojo potentially there for the
Yeah.
Vikings. And
If
that
y'all need me
defense.
Vikings, I am available. I don't have anything on Sundays, so I could even meet with y'all on the week and we could like practice.
I thought you were
and
like
stuff.
saying you were available to be their fan.
No. Available to be their choreographer
Are you a
/
Vikings fan?
safety.
I think that's what he was saying.
That is not what I'm saying.
He's a big JJ McCarthy guy.
I literally just talked for 5
Yeah, I
minutes about how
know.
I'm not a JJ McCarthy. Y'all be putting crazy stuff in my mouth. That's insane.
Yeah, this is true.
All right. I think that's it.
Yeah, that is it.
The end of the
Sunday
show.
will be AFC North. That's kind of how we're going to tackle it. Is going to do back and forth between conferences, tackling their respective divisions. So AFC North will be back or up next with the Browns, Ravens, Steelers, and whoever else is the
The
last team.
Bengals.
Bengals. Thank you. That's another interesting one. It's
a
not as
yuck
interesting as
division.
it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, it was the NFC North. As far as like closeness goes, it's going to be a little bit more cut and dry, I imagine, this year, but still going to be interesting. Did y'all see that Aaron Rodgers announced this is his last year?
Yeah.
On the Pat McAfee show,
I cried.
which was sad. Yeah, I mean he's the last of that era,
Mm-hmm.
unless part of me kind of like puts Matthew Stafford in that era, and I know he's not.
I
But-
see why you do, but
But like when I, became aware of football in like in the 2011, 2012 era, Matthew Stafford was a third, fourth year guy. Like he was decently established and he was good at the Vikings and he had Megatron. So
sure.
I kind of have Matthew Stafford in that same generation of quarterbacks. I think he's the last guy in that generation. Because I would say that 2004 was the beginning of that generation. I kind of consider Eli Manning to be that 2004 class to be different from like the Tom Brady. Like I think that there's a cutoff between the late 90s and the early 2000s.
Sure.
I think
So-
it's fair. Yeah, that is really sad news. I kind of was a quasi Packers fan for a while because of how much I loved
Oh,
Aaron
yeah.
Rodgers.
100%.
He was just so cool. I was very on board the Stephen A. Smith train of he's a bad man,
Yeah,
and he was.
for a time, I thought he was the best quarterback in the NFL, talent-wise.
I think
The
he-
season
I
they-
think he was. I don't think you have to say you think. I think he
The
was.
season
best
where he
quarterback
was
in the
like,
NFL.
I think we can run the table, and then they just like go do like that's just so badass, man. That's fire.
Yeah.
It is a large part. He is the reason I have this shirt, and that
Sure.
is an Angle Ball Classic shirt for me.
Do you think you play better than that shirt?
I don't know.
We'll have to pull up the
We have
stats.
to run the numbers
Yeah.
on that.
That's
But
an interesting question.
I liked Aaron Rodgers so much that my grandmother got me this shirt, and so
That's pretty cool.
that is why I have this shirt. And yes, it's an Angle Ball Classic. It's up there with all of our classic shirts. Your Haniger Seattle Mariners